What the Tech is sponsored by Audible.com, the internet's leading provider of audiobooks, with more than 100,000 downloadable titles across all types of literature. For a free audiobook of your choice, go to audiblepodcast.com/Andrew. And by Shutterstock.com, with more than 20 million high-quality stock photos, illustrations, vectors, and video clips. For 30% off new accounts, go to Shutterstock.com and use offer code WhatTheTech3.
What the Tech?
Hey everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I'm Andrew Zarian. I'm joined by Paul Tharada, as I am each and every week. How you doing, Paul?
Pretty good.
I didn't have anything witty to say today.
Good, because I'm always confused.
It's been a very long day for me.
Me too.
We are having a snowstorm. Paul is in the middle of a snowstorm. We had one last night. We got about 3 inches here in the middle of March, where spring is actually literally tomorrow. I don't know what's happening. I think it's the end of the world.
No, I don't. You know what? I think the problem is last year we didn't get any snow at all. So this year it's just back to normal, and we're not sure how to react to it.
This could be a big conspiracy, Paul. Paul and I spent about 45 minutes discussing conspiracies today on the phone.
Right.
And this could be all part of that conspiracy where they're changing the weather on us.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Thank you for bringing some sense
I hear
here.
you. Some people probably believe that. It's all tied to Building 7. That's all I'm saying.
It's all in the water and in Building 7.
That was where they controlled the weather.
They did. You know what? I'm going to write that down. Building 7 controlled the weather. A lot to get to today. I want to concentrate a little bit in the beginning of the show on Google, and the second half we're going to talk about Microsoft, because there's nothing else happening in technology.
The yin and the yang.
The yin and the yang of technology. There's a story that came out early this morning. Actually, it probably came out last night and I missed it. But Google is trying to combine all their chat services into one, and they're going to call it, the platform's dubbed Babbling. Now, I don't know if the name is 100% yet, but this kind of got to something else that we've always discussed, and that's the fragmentation of Google and Google services, where they'll have about 4 services that do the same exact thing, but they never communicate with each other. And I've always felt that this is a problem for Google, that they have way too much going on, and they hang on to they hang on to whatever they're doing for way too long. And we've seen it, they shut down a bunch of services. I think over the last year, between last April and now, they've shut down like 70 services, including Google Health. I mean, it was like a big deal when it was around, and now they're shutting down Google Reader, which people are in an uproar, which we discussed last week. Surprisingly, FeedBurner's still alive. No idea how. And
that's never going to last.
You think FeedBurner's going? Because that will be awful for me.
Sure.
It's going to be awful for me, and along with every other podcaster out there that use Google FeedBurner to submit their podcast to iTunes or whatever service. But I mean, it's going to happen. These are things that. And we were talking earlier about this this afternoon when we had a conversation, and you brought up a really good point. You said, how are they making money from these things? And they're probably realizing that they don't want to invest money or time into services where they cannot capitalize on and they can't make money on. I mean, it really comes down to that. So why? And my question to you, Paul, is why were they so Let me say that again. Why did Google suffer from such a fragmentation of applications and services, and now all of a sudden they're saying, oh no, what are we doing? We got to cut down on all this stuff. This is useless.
Well, I mean, I can only speculate why, but obviously when Google was just starting out 10 years ago or more, whenever it was, they sort of expanded into various things over time, and some of it stuck and some of it didn't. I almost said stuck. So, it's that the throw spaghetti at the wall, strategy.
And hope it works, yeah.
Clearly, they've gotten to the point where they have too much stuff, and so I like that they're consolidating. I think it makes sense. The one advantage they have over a company like Microsoft, at least for the time being, is that it's much easier for Google to fix things on the back end so that those things do speak to each other. than it is to fix software that's already out and deploy it on PCs around the world like Microsoft would have to do.
Yeah.
They could make back-end changes to Google Plus or any of these services, and no one would really notice, but it could improve the service, the efficiency of the way that it interoperates with other services in the back end. So that's a plus.
Let's look at how many chat services they have. They have Google Talk, Google Hangouts, Google Voice, Google Chat, Gmail Chat, and Google Plus. These are all individual chat services that do not make sense to have. I mean, one thing that I don't get about Android is that in the Messenger app, you cannot, like in messaging, like where the text messaging is, you cannot have those services like show up there when you get a message. It's like an individual app for every single one. Where in
they could fix this.
They could fix it easily, but you look at something like Windows Phone, where under messaging, it's all your messages, text,
sort
Facebook,
of. It's
whatever.
not, but it's not Skype messages, by the way. And,
that's interesting.
that's something that for them to fix that, they would have to deploy software out to the phones, and that's a pain. And so that's something I just happen to have been thinking about today because a new version of the Skype app came out, and I installed it on my phone, obviously, and logged in with my Microsoft account. And so now I have two places on my phone where I can get the same messages because it also takes in messages from Messenger. And it's a little confusing, I have to say. And, obviously that's just a transitionary thing. But, sometime between now and the next version of Windows Phone, they're going to have to address that. But that's a really hard thing to do because that software is sitting on phones all around the world. And some of them are never going to be many of them are never going to be updating.
And it's not... Skype is not fully integrated in the OS, right?
Right.
Okay, so...
Well, it isn't, but then again, I'm sorry. It's an application you install after the fact, but it does actually offer some integrated pieces to it. You can use it through the People Hub and so forth. I mean, it does have those integration bits.
It has some, but I mean, it's not like how FaceTime is integrated into iOS, for example.
I'm not actually sure about that one.
Like with FaceTime, it's fully integrated. So, iMessage and FaceTime, everything kind of coexists together. Where on Android, there's really no like video chat service that's integrated in the OS.
Yeah.
Like it kind of is and it kind of isn't.
I don't know. I mean, so obviously Google has video chat capabilities through Hangout and so forth, and so they don't have a mobile client for that. Is that what you're saying?
Well, they have Google Hangouts, but there's nothing like they push like, let's say like FaceTime is pushed by Apple saying like this is our video chat service. Like if you go into contacts, there's a FaceTime button there and you could hit it. That doesn't really exist with Google, like a Google integrated video chat service.
Yeah.
You kind of had that with Skype. I mean, Skype, you could do that with Skype, but
in fact, the screenshot I put in my little write-up today was your contact card. And one of the, and you can see that I have various ways to contact you, right? Email, phone, and Skype.
I'm trying
among others.
Which is it posted?
Yeah.
Is it Windows 8 Windows Phone 8 app tips?
Yeah.
Epic, there you go.
So if you look at that, I'm looking at the wrong window, that's why.
So here it is. So I'm looking at it now.
Or second screenshot probably in there.
My God, I look exhausted. What does it matter with me?
Well, but the point is, like if the second screenshot, the one that's black, is your contact card in the People Hub in Windows Phone, and you can see it's connected through Hotmail, Facebook, Skype, and Twitter.
Yeah.
And so under Skype, from there, I mean, all it does is launch the app, but it's kind of interesting that I can, it says chat and it's only Facebook, which is kind of strange. Skype, voice, video, and chat. So you can do those, but of course it just launches.
It's still fragmented though. I mean, it's still not like in there. To me, it would have made sense if, and I'm sure they're going to do this with the next version, that Skype is the official video service for Windows Phone, and it's just in there automatically. So everybody has a Skype account when you get a phone.
Right. It just wasn't ready.
Yeah.
For this version. Yeah. There's no doubt that's true.
But I think a lot of these companies, to go back to it, I think we're in a point where these operating systems have matured to the point that, okay, you could cut out the stuff that you don't need. You could cut out the services you're not using and combine a lot of the services that you have multiple versions of. I'm just the only issue that I have with Google is that they have so many of these services, and now Samsung, for example, has their own video chat service that they put on all their Samsung phones. So how is that going to work? How is that going to coexist in this environment where, you know, Google has, let's say, Google Video. Let's just call it Google Video. And Samsung has Samsung Video. How is that going to work now? Because your phone has both.
I don't like these proprietary things, although, you know, even something like Skype that runs on multiple platforms is obviously proprietary. But, you know, one of the things I don't like about FaceTime is that it locks you into the Apple solutions. That said, you know, Samsung has a big enough ecosystem of users and other services that them having their own video service sort of makes sense. It makes as much sense as Apple having their own. I mean, I don't like it personally, but you can see that they're doing it for the same reason that Apple does it, not to drive any benefit for users, but to lock people into their solutions, you know. If you adopt something like Skype, which again, you know, is every bit as proprietary as anything else, you could move from iPhone to iPad to Android to Windows and back again, and you know, and it would just work. It doesn't matter. You know, it's cross-platform. I mean, that's the benefit of just normal MMS or SMS, whatever as well. It works everywhere. You know,
it's fascinating how in the Android world there's totally two different versions of Android at this point. There's whatever the
there's more than two. There's the Amazon version too.
There's the Amazon version, but let's say like for the mainstream, there's the Google version, and then there's whatever Samsung is putting on top of that. And I was having this discussion on Twitter with somebody, and they were saying, well, we're complaining that Google doesn't have enough, and then now we're saying that Samsung has way too much. It's bloatware. Yep. Where's the happy ground in this? The happy ground is for Google to be doing this, not Samsung. I mean, that's when I would be happy. I don't necessarily think it's a great idea for Samsung to take this phone and to put all these services on there that Google probably will be adding themselves.
Okay. Well, Samsung has their own strategy. You know, there's no huge benefit to Samsung for just doing everything that Google does, right? So, again, I don't agree with it as a user, but I understand why they're doing it. So I can't knock them for that. But if this Babbel thing is true, and Babbel is a great name, I would say, because it sort of sounds like Google. And, you know, it's kind of a silly name and all that kind of stuff. But the notion of combining all of their communication services into a single kind of a thing,
it makes a lot of sense.
It's cool. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. They clearly have too many things that overlap right now. And it sounds like what this will do is provide them with that video chat service that you're talking about, among many other things.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. Couple years ago when they bought, I think it was like Gizmo 5. That was a company that they bought. That video chat service. It was like a Skype competitor. Everybody thought, okay, well, this is going to be Google Chat, and it's going to be integrated, so you can have video in that and audio in that. And then they kind of split everything up, right? And then Google Voice came out, then Google Chat came out, then then the video chat and Google Talk. So they kind of split everything into like 4 different branches from one starting point. And I guess it's that beta thing where they're testing different things and they're testing different services and they see what works and what doesn't. And now they're combining everything into one. Right. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hoping that it happens. I'm hoping that it's seamless, but what are you going to do? So what does Samsung do? Do you think Samsung just gives up and they're like, okay, we're not going to offer like this chat service and this messaging service now that Google's doing everything?
No, I mean, the Samsung phone, unless they change strategy pretty dramatically, is always going to be the Google stuff plus what they do. Plus, their users can just download the Google stuff if they don't get it right on the phone. I think they're, again, I don't quite understand their business with regards to the phones, but, as we were talking about last week, they're kind of throwing the kitchen sink at this S4 device, and that apparently is their strategy, overwhelm users with services and apps. And so they clearly see some value in doing that. I kind of think they've gone overboard, especially in this next phone. But there's stuff that I think is just crapware. And I hear from people pretty routinely that some of the Samsung stuff is really valuable to them for whatever reason. So They clearly have a better understanding of their own customers than I do, but I like we've discussed, I prefer the pure experience, and if Google did do this, I would obviously prefer that on Android over anything from Samsung.
Sure, yeah.
Definitely.
I was talking about phones before to somebody, and they were kind of confused with the fact that Samsung has their own branding on this, and how do you determine what the better one is? And I kind of said, well, whatever works for you, right? That's how you determine which one works for you. If you're looking for, if you want a stylus on a phone, obviously you're going to go pick up a Note. Yeah. It's become this again. Even the phones are this fragmentation in the phone market too with Google, and it's almost like, to me, it's kind of, they've lost control of it.
Google has.
Google's kind of lost control of this of the Android market, and now
I don't know.
I don't know. It's weird.
If you said that to Google, I suspect their response would be, "This is how we designed it. This is working exactly the way we designed it."
You know what's a better example of Android working? Like what Amazon did. For a long time, I was totally against it, Paul, whenever we've spoken about this. And I'm like, I would have rather wanted a Google experience on the Kindle. And I thought about it. I'm like, you know what? Then what separates it from every other tablet on the market? Nothing.
The Kindle?
Yeah, like, no, I'm saying if the Kindle was just an Android tablet, just a standard Android tablet, it didn't have like the Amazon look, it would just be like every other tablet on the market. So what would separate it? Nothing. There would be nothing special about it. The reason why the Kindle works is because it's Amazon's ecosystem and it's totally customized.
And by the way, it gives you none of the complexity of a standard Google device. And so, you and I are used to these, you can have widgets and you can have icons and you can have screens and you do all this stuff. And their whole thing is like, no, that
doesn't exist.
Simple. You've got books, you've got movies, you've got TV shows, you've got newspapers. It's a content consumption device with a super simple Fisher-Pricey kind of UI that anyone could use. The smallest child, the oldest person, anybody,
So with that said, why hasn't someone like Samsung or HTC taken the Amazon mentality with this and said, okay, you know what, we're going to use Android because it's available and it's open source, and we are going to customize the hell out of this thing,
right,
and make it our own OS. So it doesn't look like the Nexus phone. It doesn't look like, the HTC One. The Samsung Galaxy experience is a Samsung experience with Android.
I think that is where they're heading.
They kind of have to, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, I don't know if they have to, but it seems like that's where they're heading. I think it was you the other day, you were just talking about how you pick up any Android phone and they're all essentially the same thing.
Yeah. And that's why I got a lot of crap. People got really upset by that.
No, I don't know why, because that's a really accurate thing to say. But I think that's how it changes. That the aggregation of all of these Samsung apps and widgets and things that they're doing will ultimately perhaps result in a device that looks less and less like a stock Android phone or any other Android phone over time. And that with each subsequent version, those changes will get more pronounced. It's only a matter of time before the S5 comes out or the Note 3 or whatever, and it has, the SUI or whatever they call it.
And I mean, and we don't have to go to a totally drastic look. I mean, but I feel like the Samsung, I guess whatever they add on top of, I just got a text message on this. Whatever they add on top of it, it to me just feels like Samsung just took a bunch of stuff and just shoved it down my throat. It doesn't feel like there's anything special about this.
You got to go back in time. With the Windows Mobile guys, HTC did this,
and it worked for them.
Other companies, they eventually really changed the UI, right? So I think when you adopt a platform that's kind of new, the first few things you can do, you can make apps. So you buy a Windows phone. HTC makes stupid little apps. Samsung makes stupid little apps. Nokia makes actually really good apps. But that's the entire level of change you can make on Windows Phone, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your point of view. With Android, there's nothing stopping these people from going beyond apps and widgets, right? Even something like Amazon has this kind of a Amazon experience widget thing that could take over the whole screen. Still Android, underneath. The UI is all still there. But there's like this big Amazon thing that can take up much of the screen. The next step beyond that would be doing what people used to do to Windows Mobile, which is just to change the UI. And like we've been talking in the past about this notion that Apple could change the UI of iOS, but all the apps would still kind of run.
Yeah.
There's no reason you can't do that to Android too. And Samsung would be the first company.
I don't know. You know, I'm just thinking out loud. I'm just thinking out loud. I don't know what the direction of Android should be, because right now they're.
Well, I mean, what do you? Is there a problem? I mean,
no. You know what it is right now? It's market saturation, right? That's been their thing. They want to saturate the market. They want the numbers. It's going to be 70% of the market is controlled by Android.
This is just the PC model all over again, and it really did win. You know, and it's won again. So there are people who would have picked a Mac years ago and say, oh, you know, the Windows world is a mess. These things are all cheap and cheaply made, and they're all the same, and you know, they have viruses and all the kind of arguments you would make against a Windows PC. Basically, the same arguments that an iOS guy today would make about Android, because it's, you know, their parallels there are really kind of obvious.
Like if I asked you, Paul, if I asked you, or let's say I asked a regular person, I said, what is the Bentley of, you know, Windows laptops?
The Bentley,
you know, like the highest end, you know, computer that Dell has right now. You know, they're I guess the signature series that Microsoft calls. Like, what is the must-have laptop? What is the quintessential perfect example of what a PC laptop should be? I don't know if anybody could tell me that.
I don't know, like the Mercedes of the Windows world is probably like the ThinkPad Carbon. You know, that kind of a machine, you know, something that you could spend $2,000 on if you didn't try too hard.
But like in the Mac world, you could honestly say, like, you tell someone like, oh, what should I get? And I was like, oh, get the MacBook Pro 15-inch Retina with SSD drive. Like it's kind of presented to you like, oh, this is what you should have. I think this is the problem that's gonna face Android, and that's faced the PC market.
The Surface Pro in some ways satisfies your need, because it is another machine like the Carbon that has really good build quality.
But it's almost like that's a new notion, though. The fact that Microsoft is branding themselves and attaching themselves.
That's part of the reason they did it.
Yeah, which they have to. It's very important. I mean, I think the fact that the market has gotten so saturated with products and you really don't know which one to get, and Android is the same exact thing.
Though, more to the point, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
anymore.
I guess it doesn't, right?
It really doesn't. I mean, some people get really bound up with like certain apps, which I keep trying to explain, or at least I believe that is a temporary issue. But I do sort of think that most people could get by with any Android device, basically any Windows Phone device, an iPhone, and it would be fine. It makes phone calls, runs apps, play games, it connects to your services, it takes photos. You know, there's only so much you can do with this stuff. I mean, it's we all have our weird little needs and wants and stuff like that, but getting beyond very specific particulars, I really think that these things, I think we've, you know, and that's the issue we talked about the other day. I think we kind of run into a wall here.
Yeah.
The iPhone does not have a humidity sensor, you know? Shame on Apple for not including humidity as part of their phone.
I mean, again, we've hit the point where
humidity-hating bastards.
You know, there's actually a little plugin for that now. I saw it on Kickstarter. You just pop it right into the headphone jack.
I'm sure there's something you can clip onto the bottom of your iPhone, and it actually becomes a humidifier and humidifies the room you're in.
I would actually like that. That's something I would actually like. See, Balt Spencer in the chat says, I need one of those.
An eye humidifier?
An eye humidifier. I want to continue because these are questions that we get all the time, and it's so difficult to kind of put into thought. So if I'm a little flustered with this, I think that represents what a lot of people are feeling when it comes to Android. And you're right. There's a huge parallel between the Android market and the PC market in, you know, the 90s. I feel like it's the same thing at this point.
Yeah.
We're in the late 90s of the PC world where it's like a total free-for-all. And everybody's doing their own thing, and there's 1,000 products coming out every week doing the same exact thing with their own specific needs.
So by the way, I mean, so two things to that. And you're right. I mean, I should agree right up front. But
Thank you.
You know, the smartphone market, like the tablet market, as new technology device markets, are going to occur at a much faster life cycle than the PC market did, right? So the PC market goes back 30 years. You can kind of pick out different epochs that occurred during that, 30-year period, but it took a while for that thing to mature, and we kind of hit a wall. And there are little bumps you get along the way, like netbooks, you get ultrabooks now and so forth. But, basically PC industry, you get it. It's PC. It's got a keyboard. It's got some kind of pointing device, ports, whatever. That stuff is going to happen much, much more quickly, with the smartphone and the tablet. And I think that's why we've already done it. So the modern smartphone market started 6 years ago when Apple introduced the iPhone. And we're kind of done. And so someday there's going to be a little bump that comes, and I don't know what that is. If it's voice control, I think Siri was kind of the first one out of the gate in some ways, although
that's going to bring us to the next level of, I guess, mobile phones.
Maybe, sure, why not? And Google now is in there, and Microsoft's got their own voice control stuff, of course. Motion control is kind of interesting, and you saw the first bits of that in the Samsung press conference.
Well, the eye scrolling too.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. I mean, is it a gimmick or is it something that we're going to need? I am the
first
worst person.
Stupid. It's like Connect. It's the first time it's dumb. It's like Siri. You can tell something that's first gen by the sort of YouTube parody videos that pop up. But eventually, this stuff it's going to coalesce and it's going to happen.
Very, very interesting. I want to continue this, and I want to talk. Someone brought up. Dr. Forbin in our chat room brought up, now all he needs is a really good camera with better battery life. And that was kind of on the list, and I wanted to get into this, but I do want to do our Audible pick of the week. We haven't done it in about 2 weeks, but Audible's back advertising with us, and we're big fans of Audible. We talk about them all the time. I'm sure many of our users, many of our listeners have Audible. And if you don't, you could get a free audiobook to give it a shot. You could try it out, see how you like it, get your audiobook. Hours of entertainment with some of these audiobooks. I mean, literally, you'll get like 20 hours. That Steve Jobs book is literally like 22 hours on Audible. It's amazing. If you go to audiblepodcast.com/Andrew, you can sign up, get your free audiobook. Paul, what is your Audible pick of the week this week?
I'm reading some interesting books lately that have nothing to do with my typical kind of
space
topic areas,
Yeah.
This one was recommended to me by a friend last week, and it's really kind of fascinating. It's called Made to Stick. It's written by two brothers who have explored why some things that people communicate to others are instantly memorable, and some things are not. And so the classic example of a sticky story is the one that those urban legend type stories, like somebody wakes up in the morning and they're in a bathtub with a tube sticking out of their back and their kidney has been removed because it's been harvested. That's by someone who's
like a Tuesday
it.
night for me, Paul. But okay.
Yeah, and those kinds of stories are really interesting because that's actually almost never happened. Basically, it's not a true story, but everyone knows someone who knows someone who knows someone who this supposedly happened to, and that kind of thing. And it's kind of a fascinating look at how you can change the way that you communicate so that your ideas or whatever it is you're trying to communicate is sticky as well. And it's really, really interesting. And there are a lot of good examples of those kinds of stories, almost like the Freakonomic type stories of classic urban myths and so forth, and why they're so successful, why they take off. And then correspondingly, the ones that are just awful, where someone can talk and talk and talk like I'm doing right now, and you're not going to remember a word I said because I'm really boring, and so. So
what did they said? I mean, why do some things stick and others don't?
Well,
I'm buying it right now, by the way.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I mean, I think what I would say is just you got to kind of go through it, because what they really do examine some of the not just urban myths. There are other things like this that are just really well told. Like there are these lines that people remember for history and like throughout history, and like this isn't in the book, but it's like this is a day that will live in infamy. Everyone has heard this and it sticks with you. There are people who know that line and have no idea when it's from or why it was uttered, that kind of thing.
Yeah. But
for some reason, it resonates, and it's pretty fascinating. I'm only partway through it myself right now, but really, really, really.
No, that is interesting. I I took one of my English teachers in high school. This guy, I don't know what it was, but like he had an effect on me and everybody in that class.
Sure.
And you know why? Why does that happen? Why are you able to do it? I think it's a combination of things. I think some of it is the guy has to be interesting, and I think some people have that ability to connect with others. And we were talking about this. It's so funny. It comes back to this. We were talking about this this afternoon, where like even like cult leaders.
Yep. Yeah.
Like
exactly.
why? Like you look at it, you're like, how is a guy like David Koresh like? How does this happen? And it does. I mean, some people have that bizarre thing where people are attracted
to
a
gift or a curse, or whatever.
Yeah, very interesting.
The guy who got me into writing was a computer programming teacher, professor at a college, and I will never forget one of the things that he said, which I just thought was so beautiful, which was he was writing on the board and he was teaching something really boring about C++ programming, and all the kids were really not interested and bored by this. And some kid asked, why are we doing this? And Gary was writing on the board. He didn't even turn around. He just stopped writing. He lifted the chalk off the board and he said, why do anything? You're just going to die. And then he just started writing again. And in this whole room, everyone else was like just kind of shell shocked from this. And I just was laughing in the back, and I was like, I love this guy. Yeah. This is so beautiful.
Spencer Coburn, the host of The Bald Truth, is in our chat room, and he said another great book is The Tipping Point.
Yes.
By Malcolm Gladwell, which that's on Audible too. So if you want to try that out, give that one a shot too. Very, very cool, Paul. And that's our Audible pick of the week. Again, if you want to sign up, if you haven't signed up and you want to sign up, go to audiblepodcast.com/Andrew and get your free audiobook. If you already have Audible, like many of our members do, definitely check it out. I downloaded it. I'll listen to this week, actually. My wife will like it too. And now, here's a great thing. It syncs all across the platform. So I'll have it on my phone and she'll have it on hers. So perfect. Paul, very good. I like this. I like this pick. I'm very excited for this pick.
It's interesting.
Yep. Who narrated this one? All right, close it out. Don't have it. So to kind of go back to the phones, because everything is in the phone, right? Everything is about the phone. One of the viewers in our chat room said, well, you know what I want? I want a really good camera. And we were discussing this earlier where
we were.
Why haven't we seen Nikon or Canon? And I'm sure it's been done by somebody, but not to a grand effect. Why hasn't Canon been developing the sensors on these Android phones? Why hasn't Nikon been doing it? Well, seems like it's going to happen because the rumors are coming out that the Google Nexus 5 phone will have a Nikon camera sensor on board. It's a triple sensor. Now, I don't know what that means, so figure it out. But that's going to be a huge selling point of the Nexus 5, where it's going to have this phenomenal camera, and it's going to have this beefy, 3,100 milliamp battery in it. This may be the phone to get.
Well, yeah, you're kind of talking about a theoretical device at this point. I mean, maybe they announced this at Google I/O, but given the size of the battery and this notion of an incredible camera, I'm starting to wonder if it's not going to be a fairly thick, heavy device to accommodate both of those things, which I think we're almost at the point where if it was a truly excellent camera, I bet a lot of people would put up with that.
I would definitely 100%. I would put up with it.
How long is it before we see a smartphone that has an integrated camera with optical zoom?
You tell me. How long do you think? 5 years?
It can't be that long. I talked about compressed life cycles. A year.
Oh, you think a year?
I think it has to happen.
Well,
soon.
I'll give you a perfect example. We may not need optical zoom on these things, and I'll tell you why. Logitech is releasing a webcam, the C930E. It's for the enterprise world. It has a much wider angle lens for presentations, but 1080p. All the specs. But a very interesting feature of it is that it does up to 4x zoom, and it stays at its true resolution.
Interesting.
There's no quality loss with the digital zoom up to 4x. Now, I haven't seen the camera. I'm getting an early preview of the camera late April, so a week before it comes out, I'll have my hands on this. But that may be, if they have figured out a way to do,
so that would solve the problem.
That would solve the problem, and it would look amazing. I mean, you really don't need optical zoom if that's the case.
But how big is that thing? How big is the sensor or whatever on the webcam? Because a webcam can be any thickness.
I mean,
they don't really have to think about that.
But I mean, how big? Let's comparatively, how big is a sensor? You think? I mean, they're not huge sensors, right? If we're doing it on webcams, let's say another 3 years, if to adapt that technology into phone sensors. But that may be it. I mean, we may not need optical zoom. What do you think, Paul? I would listen. I would prefer.
I've been super disappointed with all the cell phone cameras I've tried, and I keep, I try to be remain positive about it. But the truth is, even the ones that are supposed to be good aren't really that good for the most part. And I don't have an iPhone 5 around that I can use regularly, but when I tested them over the fall, the iPhone 5 was clearly the best phone camera. And I have a Lumia 920, which everyone talks about, and to be honest, it's not that great. I mean, it's better than my other smartphone cameras, but we're talking about a pretty low bar here. I mean, my HTC 8X is good, but not great. The Lumia 820 is also good, but not great. And I would say that the Lumia 920 is very good, but it's still not great. And
yeah.
I went to a basketball game last night, and I was playing with the settings. And you can do things like change the ISO. They actually have like a sports mode. And, to be honest, these pictures they just weren't great. And I think I was talking to you about it maybe a month or so ago. I went to a game, and the person in front of me had an S3. And I was looking over this guy's shoulder at what he saw through his viewfinder. And based on what I saw on the screen, again, I don't have the photos. The photos he was taking looked really good. Yeah. They certainly, and I just have not. I've just never been able to duplicate this myself on the devices I have.
Do you think we've come to let's look at the iPhone 5. Do you think the iPhone 5 is at a point and shoot level?
No, I don't. But in the field of smartphone cameras, it amazes me that we're still saying this. There is the iPhone, and then there's everything else.
Everything else, and it's.
I think. I mean, again, I don't have every single device.
What is it? Why?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't. Almost any smartphone will take a decent picture on a sunny day outside. That's easy. That's fine. The trick is doing some, the zoom type stuff, or indoor, a cloudy day, that kind of stuff.
Image stabilization. I mean, most of the time, the problem is a lot of people zero shutter lag. That's another thing that goes a long way.
Yeah. I've taken decent decent pictures with different smartphone cameras, but what I want is the type of thing where I can just walk out the door on a day when I'm on vacation, or it's a birthday party or something, and I can have that one device and it actually works, and I don't have to worry about it or think about it. And I'm not, to be honest, because I don't use it every day. I don't have one here. I don't know that the iPhone 5 actually meets that.
What cameras are you using right now that you have, like regular cameras, not the iPhone or anything?
Like camera cameras?
Camera cameras.
I just have a point and click, point and shoot type cameras. So I don't even know what I have. It's I think it's a Panasonic or something. It's fine. Last several years, I've been buying cameras that have incredible optical zoom. So I think mine it might even be 40x, but it's at least 24x. Widescreen, fairly high pixel density and all that stuff. But I mean, that camera, it's night and day. You can't compare it to any smartphone. They're not comparable in the slightest.
I mean, I've kind of eliminated the point and shoot from my life, but is it at the level of a 10-year-old point and shoot? I mean, what would you say?
No, it's way better. But that's the thing. So as good as that is, that there are these professional digital SLRs that people love to buy. And I don't like to spend money on stuff like that or care about that stuff too much. But I've got friends that do, and we've got a friend who travels with us, and she'll send us photos that she takes of my kids or whatever we're doing. And some of the photos she takes are absolutely stunning, professional quality. And, there's your level jump again. And so a point and click is fine for life's daily events. But, she takes these photos, and They're absolutely astonishing.
Like I have an SLR and I have a DSLR, and I don't use it as much anymore because the convenience factor of having the phone always available, and boom, I take a picture. You know, if I want to get a little artsy, I'll angle it in a way, you know, where it looks a little fancy. But to me, I'm at the point where I'm thinking about selling my SLR because I'm never using it.
Right.
Like it. Yes,
I can't be bothered personally to have to carry that thing around, take it out, play with the lenses. You know, people love that stuff. Some people, but you know, for most people, obviously, something simpler is better. The best thing would be if your smartphone that you already have in your pocket just worked. You know, so it doesn't. You know, that's the thing. I mean, it's really bothersome to me that, you know, and again, you can take the occasional excellent photo, but even the 920, low light situations, you know, I go in restaurants and stuff and look at these pictures that I've taken over the past week, for example, and a lot of them are just lousy. They're just they're no better than anything on any other smartphone, you know, and I think that's the issue. So this is something we do have to get over. Definitely.
So do you think if this is true, let's say Nikon is doing the sensor on this thing, realistically though, I mean, what can Nikon do that, you know, the other sensor makers have not? Whoever they've been using, I don't know. What if they've been using?
Well, that's why I said maybe this needs to be a bigger device, because the one thing that the smartphone makers have going for them is that they've been working on these really thin devices for a long time. You know, when you make a point and shoot type camera, an SLR especially, you're not worried about the thickness of it, and you know, the thicker the better. That's how you get really good image quality.
But I mean, who's making the sensor? Do we even know who it is? Or
oh no, I'm not sure personally, but yeah, I'm sure this is.
I mean, that'd be a great selling point.
Let's see, what is Nokia? Nokia always talks about their kind of Carl Zeiss optics, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean that's mostly the lens, you know.
Yeah, so let me see if they list it.
Yeah, I'm wondering that too. I'm trying to see for the.
Yeah, actually, they do. They have a pretty detailed amount of information here for what they have. But let me see.
While the audience is wondering what we're doing, I'm Wikipediaing the Note 2 to try to find out what kind of sensor they're using, because to me, I would assume that they would go with a camera manufacturer for a sensor.
Right.
You know, if you want to kind of have this advantage over the other guys, like why not?
It may be something you don't want to report because you want to maintain that advantage too.
I mean, at this point, there's no advantage, right? I mean, they're all pretty much the same, but it's an interesting concept that if this next generation Android phone, you know, the Android flagship phone has a phenomenal camera. I mean, let's say hypothetically, it's much better than the iPhone. This. For me, this is an important phone. I would go pick this phone up instantly because the camera is so important for me. I don't know if it's that important to everybody else. I think everybody, to be honest, and this speaks huge volume as far as where we are with camera phones and what it matters. I don't think it matters at all. Most people are taking, you know, really decent shots with their iPhones, and they're just putting it to Instagram and crapping the phone, the shot up.
Yeah, that always cracks me up.
I mean, it's a perfect example of what we're doing. So are we doing that because they're bad photos to begin with, or are we doing that because, you know, we're idiots at this point? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know either. I mean, years and years ago, I used Instagram on it was probably an iPhone 3GS or something, whatever it was at the time. And you take a picture and you make a Polaroid print, and you're like, "Yep, looks like a Polaroid." Okay,
so
you know, like whatever. You know.
So it's Sony that's actually making the sensor. Nikon designs and develops the sensor, but Sony is manufacturing it.
Interesting.
That's how it works for Nikon. But I mean, Sony makes cameras, so I would trust a Sony, you know, over, you know, whatever sensor they're using. I don't know. To me and to you and myself, this is an important feature, but how many people actually want this?
Everyone has their own preferences, right? That's fine. I mean, I'm not. All I'm saying is that it would make such a difference if these things were as good as they're touted to be. It would make such a difference. And I would love to be able to, go on a trip and just have this one thing. Of course, the problem is when you're using one device to do everything, then you run into battery life issues. And if the battery isn't replaceable, then you buy some kind of a crazy sled, which is humongous, or you're always trying to plug it in. And at that point, it's like, just bring a camera, like whatever. If it's that important, just bring a small point and shoot camera.
So on this hypothetical Google Nexus 5, it's going to have a 3100 milliamp battery, which is pretty much the same thing as a Note 2. They're saying it's going to be a 5-inch display, which I think that's a little too big.
Well, that's the S4 size.
I know, but it's too big. Like I'm fine with the 4.7 inch. Like we're getting into like crazy categories now.
Yeah, I personally feel like 4.7 is a sweet spot, but yeah,
I don't know. I don't know why the market is going into this like gigantic phone.
Because that's what people want.
I guess. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. So I don't know. I thought it was a interesting story that they might be putting Nikon as a sensor in these phones. Paul, I want to talk to you about this weird rumor that started this week about Windows Phone and the life cycle.
Yep.
I want to get into that, but before we go into that, I do want to talk about another one of our sponsors, Shutterstock.com. What is Shutterstock? Well, if you are developing websites, if you're doing any kind of graphics work, if you're even doing video editing, Shutterstock is the place to go. They have over 20 million stock photos, illustrations, vectors, videos for 30% off on a new account. You could get signed up and use offer code WhatTheTech3. Now, this is why Shutterstock is really, really cool. Whenever we develop a new show or whenever we're developing a video open for a show, it takes so much work to kind of go in there and develop the video the way that you want it to be. We use services like Shutterstock. We go in there, we find exactly what we want, and we modify it, and we use it in our imaging. We've done this a ton of times. We've done this for a bunch of video intros. Like we're doing one for This Week in Radio Tech, and I just purchased something off of Shutterstock, and we're going to put it in there, and we could customize it. And done. Amazing stuff. For websites, you could use this too. Great stuff. If you sign up and use offer code WhatTheTech3, you get 30% off on a new account. You give it a shot, see how you like it. Paul, have you done any of your web work yourself or no?
My web work?
Yeah, like your website stuff.
Sounds like wet work.
Wet work.
Yeah, I started out as a web developer and webmaster, and I wrote the back end of the predecessor to the SuperSafe, actually, and the SuperSafe as well. So the SuperSafe Windows, the original version, and the predecessor site to that, the Internet Nexus, I wrote the back ends for those sites in ASP, classic ASP.
I did some of the work for my site, and the biggest problem that I have is actually like doing Photoshop work and doing like creating videos, intros for the shows. I'm awful with that stuff. Like creatively, I'm awful. So a service like Shutterstock really goes a long way for me. Again, if you use offer code WhatTheTech3, you get 30% off on a new account. And I want to thank Shutterstock for supporting What the Tech. So, Paul, I want to go into the story before we wrap it up, because I spoke to Rob Greenlee from formerly of Microsoft, or I don't know. I guess from Microsoft.
Yeah, Microsoft.
And we were talking about just general podcasting stuff. He's like, "Hey, listen, have you spoken to Paul?" And I go, "No, I haven't." He goes, "Man, can you get him to comment on this, because it's been insane this week." So Microsoft put out, I guess, some sort of literature on their site saying that the support cycle for Windows Phone 8 is 18 months, and they're not supporting it beyond that. So 2014, they're killing the support for it.
Well,
okay,
that's a tough way to put it.
Okay,
okay.
And from that, I personally took it as, well, look, okay, it's going to be almost 2 years old. You're going to be at the latest and the greatest the following year anyway, so what difference does it make? All these bloggers took the story as Microsoft is killing Windows Phone.
Nobody got this one right. So when Microsoft announces a support lifecycle for something, it's not announcing that it's killing it. It's announcing that it is supporting it. And it is exactly the opposite of what these people are saying. The other thing is that, when people hear Windows Phone, they think about their phone. and they think about the device, and they think like, I just went to AT&T or Verizon or wherever, and I just signed up for a 2-year, wireless contract. And you're telling me that this thing that I am stuck with for 2 years is only going to be supported for 18 months. And that's not even close to what they said. The two currently supported versions of, or I should say 2 new versions of Windows Phone that are in the market, Windows Phone 7.8 and Windows Phone 8.0, will be supported with new software updates and security fixes for 18 months from their release dates, roughly speaking. It's actually a few months after their actual release date, but whatever. But you understand that there will actually be updates probably to both of these systems before those 18 months are out. They're not tipping you to when the release of Windows Phone 9 is. You don't have to be Nostradamus to look back and realize that they've released a version of Windows Phone once a year for 3 years running, and that chances are, I hate to ruin the endpoint here, but Windows Phone 9 or whatever they call the next release will probably ship in November 2013, or approximately 9 months before that 18-month support cycle runs out. So, the problem with Windows Phone is that carriers can block updates, and they have those kinds of issues and so forth. But the truth is, by the time that 18 months rolls out, chances are really good your phone has been updated to the next version anyway. And by the way, when that happens, the 18-month thing gets re-triggered, and you've got another 18 months to go. And so this is like a lot of complaining and whining about nothing.
But
and
yeah, it's really
completely misconstruing what it means.
But it's really a non-story that spun into. But how do you come to the conclusion that they're killing Windows Phone?
You're an idiot. There's no
multiple sites. I mean, multiple sites came to this conclusion that oh my God, Microsoft is realizing that this isn't working.
Point fingers at particular individuals, but that is idiotic.
No, it really is.
It's stupid. This is stupid. That's not sophisticated.
I don't know.
I wrote what I wrote because of what I saw out there, and so I like you looked at a couple of these things and was like, wait a minute, what? This is not what they said.
Well, I actually read a headline on, and I don't want to say the site, but I read a headline, and the headline was Microsoft killing Windows Phone in 2014. 2014 was the date that they gave, and I'm like, what?
Unbelievable.
I'm like, what happened? And I clicked on it. I started reading.
You will have a new version of Windows Phone before 2014.
Well, I would imagine every year we're going to get something.
Windows Phone is on a very compressed timeline. We were just talking about this. I mean, they do a new version every year.
Yeah.
So, the fact that Windows Phone 7, which came out in 2010, is not broadly supported with new software updates today, not really a shocker. We've moved on. That's how it works. I'm sorry. I mean, it's just not that. It's just not that interesting.
The other story that came out was Windows 7 SP1 will be automatically installed on every computer that's pretty much connected to the internet if you don't have SP1. And this started a whole uproar too.
Really?
Yeah. I got a bunch of emails about this.
This thing's been out for 2 years.
I'll tell you why.
Why don't you have it?
I got a bunch of emails from people saying, I would like to know Paul's opinion on this because I personally do not think this is a good idea. And I said, okay, tell me why. He goes, a lot of computers have issues with certain updates. And if I know, a certain update was affecting my computer to act a certain way, I'm going to skip that update. How can you skip it if it's in SP1? And I said, and I'm thinking like, well, you do have a point there, but you have a much larger problem than...
You almost don't have a point there. There's a problem in the tech world where people who know too much about stuff tend to overthink things and they want to micromanage things, and this just falls under that category. There's a really we're getting away from this finally a little bit, but people could always point back to this thing that happened somewhere back in the mists of times. Remember when Microsoft screwed up NT4 SP2, and ever since then I've never installed service packs. I don't trust Microsoft. And the instances where Service Pack install screws things up on a PC are so minuscule compared to the times when installing this thing actually helps a lot and does what it's supposed to do and doesn't cause any issues and all that kind of thing. It's just, I don't understand this mentality. I mean,
I know people that don't do updates still, Paul. They
Yeah.
do not do updates. I have relatives that get really upset. Like my father-in-law, he was having some computer problems. I went and I took a look. It's Windows 7. And I'm like, you haven't done any updates. Like, no, absolutely not. I'm not doing any of this. It's going to mess everything up. I go, no, it won't. And then at that point, I'm like, you know what? Forget it. I'm not even going to bother with this. But people still have that mentality with this stuff.
I don't get it.
I wonder if it's like an older, like it's an old school thing. Like if you use Windows 95 and Windows 98, you have that mentality. If you never use that stuff, like that doesn't exist.
To be like these old school people. And again, it tends to be people, again, who know too much about everything, you know? It's like someone who gets in a car and says, you know, I'm not going to wear a seatbelt because, you know, sometimes that seatbelt hurts you too.
Yeah, sure.
It doesn't just save lives. Sometimes it kills you, you know? And yeah, by the way, sometimes it probably does. But, you know, overall, it's safer to wear the seatbelt. You know, and I just think it's the wrong place to be spending your time, you know, worrying about stuff. I mean,
people are freaking out, and I'm like, this is a 2-year-old update at this point, like February 2011,
it's
right?
2 years old. There's never been another service pack, although arguably what would have been service pack 2 kind of just came out. So the Patch Tuesday stuff from this month included a hotfix rollup for Windows 7, which was basically service pack.
Have you ever had a Windows update, you know, screw you up in any way?
No.
I mean, I could go back. You know when? I'll tell you exactly the only time this happened. 2002. It happened to me. I had a raid going, and I did a Windows update, and it messed up the raid. I was getting a blue screen constantly with that Windows update, and it had to do with crappy hardware.
Yeah.
The RAID controller.
No, I mean, obviously, I have lots of computers. I keep them all up to date. They're all automatic. My families are all automatic. I, on purpose, tend to willfully install everything like that. Just to, you know, I put myself in front of the train just to, you know, if anything goes wrong, at least I'll be able to write about it and help other people with it or that kind of thing. But, you know, the truth is, yeah, nothing bad's ever happened. So I don't really have much to say. I mean, I think which is why I'm so confused about this.
I think you're right. I think it's this old school way of doing, you know, running a PC. Like I still do this stuff. Like I go into services and I shut down like fax and I shut down tablet mode and I shut down, you know, telephony. Like I'll shut down like all these services because I'm so used to doing it from like 15 years ago.
You know, I have to try, and you know, it's easier to give advice than it is to take advice, that kind of thing. But you know, you can go in Windows 8, you can go to the task manager, you can look at the list of things that starts up when your computer runs, and you can disable some of them. And I'll do that sometimes. You know, there's some stuff I don't really need launching every time my computer boots. I'll do that. I will do that, and even Windows actually recommends it. You know, every once in a while, Action Center will put up a little notification. Hey, why don't you take a look at your startup items? You seem to have a lot of things going on, and so it's that kind of stuff. But, you know, this is the same thing as, you know, pre-SSD days.
Yeah,
people would manually run defrag all the time and try to organize everything on their hard drive so that it was all at the front of the disk and it would run faster. And it's like, you know, this thing's supposed to make your life easier. You know, you're not serving your robotic overlord. Just let it do it.
And listen, I'm not saying, you know, if you get a computer that came with McAfee, I'm not telling you like don't shut down McAfee. Like, you know, don't go to like MS-Config and shut down McAfee. Like, I'm actually talking like I go into services, like Windows services, and I shut down services thinking, okay, I'll get, you know, a fraction of a more, you know, memory with this or a little bit more CPU usage out of it. But that doesn't exist now,
though, right?
Oh yeah, you could really screw something up like that. I did something. I don't know what I did once. I turned off.
Listen,
something.
all I can offer the world, seriously, is learn from my mistakes. That's all I can offer. Right?
But do you think those days are gone?
I've made lots of mistakes, and you listen to me or you don't. I'm not always right. I get that, but in this case, I used to spend time doing this kind of stuff.
Deleted a very important INI file in Windows 95 once.
Oh my God! Of course.
You just go in there and just start deleting everything.
No, in the old days, you know, Windows 3X, you know, the Windows 3.1 or Windows 3.0 resource kit, whichever version, actually came with a screwdriver, like a physical screwdriver. It came in the bag with the book, and it included a very detailed guide to win any and sys any. And there were all these configuration changes you can make that would improve Windows in some dramatic way. And some of them, they really worked. This is not this is not what we have.
Yeah, it's a totally different world
It's
now.
not like that. It's just not. So
listen, to me, and this is, and this kind of, it shows where the market has gone. Nobody talks about RAM and CPU anymore. I mean, nobody talks about that. Like,
no, you know what? I subscribe to some magazines digitally through Amazon, and Maximum PC is a good example of this kind of thing where, actually even like PC Mag and probably PC World get into this occasionally. They'll do things like review SSDs, and the raw write speed, the raw, this speed, blah blah blah, and it's like, oh god, like what is this crap? Like, it's just you can spend a lot of time on this kind of stuff. There is a subculture of people who most people probably would like to have a nice car. Some people buy a nice car and then they spend another 10 grand adding crap to it and making it really silly. And they have like a little electronic control thing that controls the amount of air that goes through the, whatever. I don't know how a car works, but you can do stuff like that. But that's not a normal activity.
No, listen, I think that's fine. And that's how you learn, but it's no longer, a lot of this stuff that we used to do is no longer necessary. I mean, SSD drives.
You're just spinning your wheels, not literally in this case, but it's that journey is the reward thing. Like, the technology is not the goal. It's not the end point. It's not the destination. It's how you get there. And I used to, it's like people who dual boot their computers between two operating systems. It's like if you're dual booting, you're just playing with your computer now.
Yeah, sure.
You just, just leave it on and work.
Like I do that. I fiddle around and I'll play around with this stuff. But like I like that stuff. But it's not a necessary thing for me to do. I don't need to overclock my CPU because my 500 megahertz AMD is starting to struggle a little bit. That doesn't exist anymore. Like we are in the days where we have quad core i7s, and I cannot think of a scenario that the average PC user will run out of speed. Like, oh my god, I'm having such a bad time here. We're in a totally different world now. I mean, when you buy a computer, it's no longer about the RAM and the CPU. It's about
I probably won't do this, but I often think. And I was at Best Buy the other day. I almost did it. You walk around. They have a $300 computer you can buy. It's like a Dell laptop. I bet I could get work done on that thing. I bet it would be enough. There's certain things I do because of my job. Like you want a core processor, for example, if you're going to do Skype and have HD video, for example. There are certain things that you do need a more powerful computer for. I need a more powerful computer, but man, you just don't need to do stuff like this. Like all these little self-help things, like replace your SSD with a faster SSD. Really?
By the way, I'll recommend this. If you want to save a computer that's a couple years old, and you're thinking about you're thinking about getting a new one, get an SSD drive in that thing. It is night and day. Night and
hard
day.
Drive with an SSD is a different thing entirely.
Oh my god,
Absolutely.
It is the best thing you could possibly do.
Yep.
Forget about upgrading the RAM, because most of these computers have 4 gigs anyway. There's no reason to go beyond that. Get an SSD drive and tell me. I got my father. I fixed a 4-year-old laptop for my dad. It's his first computer. He's all about the Facebook and everything on that thing.
Right.
He loves it. The thing was a piece of junk. The hard drive was, I was hearing the gears turning. It was awful. I put an SSD drive in there, 256 gig
Steam came out of
SSD.
it.
The thing Windows loads in literally like 10 seconds. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
There's no stutter. There's no lag. There's nothing. It's amazing. For $100. I mean, I got it during the holiday season, so it was on sale. $100. It goes such a long way. Like we are not in that phase where we're changing our CPUs anymore. Like I remember, I used to do this all the time. I used to get AMDs because it was easy to change and they were cheap. So I'm saying, okay, every 2 years I could get a new AMD in this thing.
Yeah.
Those things
my
are gone.
first PC, I probably rotated through so many things that by the time I throw out the box, there wasn't a single component in there that was original. It was, everything eventually was cycled through, and you do whatever CPUs you could do on that motherboard, and eventually you would need to replace the motherboard because you'd want to get to some new socket, whatever. And I probably rotated through several generations of hardware components in there. But, we're at the point now, like I don't even need like an optical disc anymore for anything, basically.
It's amazing. It's amazing how it's changed it. And to kind of go back to what we were saying when we started the show, the phone market is the PC market. Every phone now, what are they talking about? They're talking about, now it's a quad core, 1.9 gigahertz processor.
The S4 is going to be what's it called? An octa-core or whatever
Only in Europe. Yeah, it's an octa-core, 1.6 gigahertz processor. And
why only in Europe? Do they not have stringent environmental rules? Is there some kind of smog that comes out of this thing?
I don't know. That's interesting. I guess it has to do with like battery technology, right?
I have no idea.
Like we care more about the battery than they do. I would like to. Different LTE modems. I guess it has to do with the LTE, but like we're in that phase where it's like, okay, who has more horsepower? But that's going to go away too. People are buying computers and they have no idea what kind of CPU they have in that thing. Nobody cares about that anymore. I mean, I shouldn't say nobody. The enthusiasts care.
I had a look when we were talking about this. I mean, I bought a new computer last year. When I did, I made sure I got whatever the biggest thing was at the time, because my intention is to hold on to this thing for a while. But if you just ask me off the top of my head, like, what's the processor in your computer?
You don't know. I mean, but if I had
asked, I just don't know which one it is. Like, why would I? But
I mean, I have relatives that go and my keyboard died and we got to wrap it up. But I have relatives that go and buy computers, and they would call me like, oh, I'll never forget this. I had my uncle go and buy a computer, and he was debating if he should get the 750 megahertz computer or the 800 megahertz compact. Like, it was a big deal for him. He's like, yeah, but the 800 is faster. Nobody does that. I don't think anybody's going into a store and they're saying, well, should I get, the 2.7 i7 or should I get the 2.4 i7? The average user is not doing it. Listen, if you're gaming, if you're doing, heavy duty video editing, yeah, of course that stuff matters, but the average person has no idea what's inside of the computer anymore because it's a secondary thing now. It's all about the display and it's all about the touch. Those crazy times we're living in, Paul.
Until we move on to Minority Report.
I can't wait for that.
I know.
And it's all going to be like thought-based. I'm going to think about going to Google. It's going to be... I
just had a really sour thought and went out on Twitter.
Yeah. Oh, boy. All right, Paul. I think that's it for today. I think we're done for today.
Fine.
I feel like we just did a show, which we did. We did a show on Friday. For people who... are we back to our regular schedule in the coming weeks?
Yeah, but in a couple of weeks, I'll be going back out to Redmond, so we'll have to figure that out. But yeah, this week, next week, we should be good, for a little while.
So it's almost like a little bonus, because we just did a show like 4 days ago, and we're doing another one. I had fun today. We spoke about a lot of fun stuff, like cameras and megahertz. We should do a whole show on Windows 95. I think that's
Windows
what we should
95
do. And like tweaks and tips for Windows 95.
Did you see the picture I posted today of the Windows 95 disk?
No, where is it? On WinSupersite?
On Twitter.
Oh, I thought it was. I only go to WinSupersite.
It's the beta. I think it's beta 2, or I can't see it from here, but
/ let me see. Thurrott.
I have the Office RTM disk, Office 95. I think it's beta 2, Windows 95 beta 2, I think.
Is that what was the title of it? Like if your post?
Something about a corkboard, something corkboard memories.
You have you do a lot of twittering.
I'm a twittering kind of guy.
A lot of twittering here. I'm at yesterday. I can't find it.
It was today.
Was it before Windows 7 SP1?
Oh my god.
That was yesterday.
For Windows 7.
Let's see. 5 hours ago, you tweeted me.
Here, I will send it to you.
That's
the picture. That's not the tweet. It's the picture.
Oh, you sent it to the wrong
so it's
one.
the final release of Office for Windows 95 from July 1995. And it says Windows 95 Beta 2 release. There's no date on that one, but oh, no, there is. I'm sorry. Yeah, October 1994.
Oh, board memories. I got it. Let me see here.
There's also an Intellivision pin. The
Look at
running
that.
from Intellivision.
Look at that thing. An Office 95.
Yep.
I don't remember much about Office 95. I remember Office 97.
That summer was the best because not only was Windows 95 coming, but they had Office 95. They had Plus for Windows 95. First time they did a Plus pack.
I remember.
And they
Plus.
had MSN for Windows 95, which was Microsoft's kind of CompuServe-like online service, which was launched at a beautiful time right as the internet was taking off.
But all Plus was, it was just like, sound effects and themes, right?
Yeah. Well, yes and no. I mean, there was other stuff.
Let me
Yes
see.
and no.
Windows 95 Plus. What did it have? I'm at the Microsoft Plus page.
No, there were utilities and things in there too. I bet related to like disk stuff or whatever. Let me see. Yeah, Drive Space 3, Compression Agent, Themes, Dial-Up Networking Server,
Ooh, Spider Solitaire.
Solitaire,
Yeah.
Task Scheduler.
Plus 98 came with McAfee virus scan. I don't remember that.
I probably wrote a review of that one.
Oh, for it was a 3-month trial. Okay, that's why. All right, Paul. For all
CD
things,
player. I remember that.
it did. And Internet Explorer 3.0 for Plus 95.
And Golf, 1998 Lite.
I remember that. I felt like I had more fun using a computer then. I was naive and young. I enjoyed it. Now I'm so jaded by all this stuff. I'm like, ah.
My review of Plus for Windows 98.
Really?
It was a wonderful addition to your Windows 98 installation.
Oh, this is like an original review.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Did you have to like resubmit everything, or this is like from the original site?
It's in there from somewhere. It got pulled forward and distorted.
God.
As it got pulled. I don't know.
Wow, Van Halen 3.
Yeah, that was the album.
Oh my God, I got to read this. This is amazing.
Yeah.
Microsoft Picture It. I remember that. Wow, this is like right down memory lane. Not a lot's changed. It's all the same.
My son's a little bigger. There's a picture of him as a baby in there somewhere.
Let me see.
I was 14 or 15.
Look at
Maybe
that.
15.
What resolution is that picture? It's like 180 by 90.
That's all we had back then. That was the size of my screen. I don't know what that is. It's fun.
That's amazing. Oh, a lot of fun. I'm going to the golf game looks really good. Is that Tiger Woods?
I was wondering the same thing. Was he around in 1998?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't know.
Interesting. All right, Paul. All things Paul Thurrott. Everybody go to winsupersite.com if you want to read Paul's review of Plus Windows 98 from June 25th, 1998. The original review is there. And I am going to recommend it on Facebook post. And I recommend you do the same too. Everybody go and recommend this, and let's confuse people. And people are going to be like, how come Paul's reviewing old stuff?
Right.
There you go.
I'm tired of it because the new stuff sucks.
Yeah, it's awful. Everything is
I want to
awful.
go back to when everything was great.
If you want to follow Paul on Twitter, it's at The Rod. I'm at Andrew Zarian on Twitter if you want to follow me there. We also have a What the Tech page on Facebook. So if you're on Facebook, you could join our What the Tech page. And most of the time, just give you links to shows. Also, subscribe to us. We're on iTunes. We're on Windows Phone. We're everywhere podcasts are available. And anything you want to promote, Paul? Anything going on? Anything new?
Anything going on?
Yeah.
I don't
What
know.
are you doing these days?
Yeah, I'm working on those books. Xbox Music book is getting there. It's almost done. Windows Phone book, coming along.
You're doing an Xbox Music book?
Yep.
I didn't know that.
Sure.
I don't listen.
A little book. It's
Okay.
a little self-published book. It's a book with air quotes around the word book.
Okay. Very cool.
It's a booklet. It's kind of a pamphlet, really.
Very cool.
Birthday
Very.
card.
That's it. Just one page. That's it. Pop
Right.
up.
It says use this instead, and it's like a link to like Spotify.
All right, guys. We'll see you all next week on What the Tech. Good night, everybody.